We're going to take a look at the deals and disagreements that took place at this year's World Economic Forum in Davos. Joining us to discuss is Taylor Hathorn, visiting fellow at the Independent Women's Forum Center for American Safety and Security. Taylor, good afternoon. So President Trump published an open letter to Canadian Prime Minister Carney yesterday, informing him that Canada's invitation to join the Board of Peace had been rescinded. Where do you think this tension is coming from the two leaders? And what do you think it means for U.S.-Canada relations?
Well, I think that the Prime Minister's speech got a lot of hoopla over the weekend because he talked about a significant realignment that needed to happen, which was a values-based realignment, which was a slap in the face for America because America has many of the same values, or at least on paper, has many of the values that Canada has. You know, the respect for democracy, freedom of religion, rule of law. These are things that are innate in both of our laws and in our constitutions. And so really it felt like Carney just doesn't like President Trump. The more concerning thing to me, which is probably where the president's head is at, is Carney and Canada's inability, much like France's, to distance themselves from China. It almost appears that they feel like that separating themselves from the United States of America and talking about, you know, them being able to stand on their own 2 feet is really not about them standing on their own 2 feet, and more about them being able to stand on China's shoes, which is a really concerning development for our hemisphere and for our supposed allies.
So where does that put Canada-U.S. relations? Is it going to strain it? What do you think?
I really think that it's unfortunately just a wait and see. You know, we really need to see if this was Carney just getting up on the world stage and not liking the fact that Donald Trump's administration has really said what they were going to do, has held firm on their line on tariffs when our boundaries have been crossed and our expectations for partnership have been crossed. I really think that it's just going to be a wait and see moment. Hopefully our relations maintain. You know, I love our Canadian friends, and I think our Canadian friends love us, and it would be mutually beneficial to have that relationship maintained. But we cannot work with a nation who doesn't want to work with the United States and who feels like partnering with China and the CCP, which is literally, I would like to remind people, enslaving Uyghur Muslims and committing acts of violence against people who do not align themselves with their communist ideals. I think that is a very dangerous road to go down for any free and sovereign nation. And my warning to Canada and to the Prime Minister would be, you might be, you know, slapping President Trump in the face with some of these comments that you're making, but is that really what is best for Canada and the Canadian people? And if you look at the situation with their border, their fentanyl crisis, their economy, if you look at how Canada's doing right now, I'm not certain that the leadership of the past Prime Minister or this one is really something that I would want to put my foot behind if I was a Canadian.
Yeah, I mean, I love our Canadian friends too, but you're right. We'll just have to wait and see how this develops. But I want to talk to you about Greenland as well. Trump's looking to make a deal. So far, he says that the current framework, the U.S. would gain total access to Greenland with no time limit, without paying anything. And Trump actually commented on that aboard Air Force One. I just want you to take a look at this quick clip.
We're all going to work together, and actually NATO is going to be involved with us. We're going to be doing in conjunction, parts of it in conjunction with NATO, which is really the way it should be. And we won't have any expense because we're not going to have expense. Other than building the Golden Dome, we're going to build the Golden Dome, and we'll have participation in that also. The cost of the Golden Dome, we'll have participation in that also, meaning with the expense of it.
So I don't know if this deal will include U.S. ownership, but can the U.S. achieve its security goals without actual ownership of the Arctic island through this framework?
The real question is not whether can the United States achieve what they're looking to achieve. We can. Our military industrial complex is great, right? Like our military is in great footing. We've got great leadership. We've got the most industrialized military in the world. You know, China claims to have the largest, but they count fishing boats as part of their Navy vessels. So I don't really consider that to be a major threat of the United States from China. But I really think that this is more about what the United States could achieve and how quickly it could achieve if the NATO partners get on board. Those 7 Arctic states that are members of NATO understand the importance of this Golden Dome. I mean, if a missile flies from Russia to the United States, it's going to go right over Greenland. You can look at the mapping of any of those ICBMs, and you can look and see what destruction it would have. You look at their submarine pipelines, and you look at the thawing of the Arctic ice and the shipping lanes. This is all Greenland is a very, very integral part of national security, not just for the United States and for the Western Hemisphere, but also for our allies in the East. And they know that, they understand that. There's a lot of posturing happening from the centralized European states, from Germany, from France, about how they don't want to align themselves with the United States. But I would like to remind everyone that France did pull out of NATO at a certain time period. And so I don't really want to put too much stock into what these other European leaders are saying whenever the European leaders that really matter, who understand the security crisis that's going on in the Arctic regions, are still stepping up and working with us and coming to the table. And another point that I would like to bring up is, I've said this so many times when we've talked about how President Trump handles security issues and negotiations. He wrote an entire book on his methodology. He says something absolutely off the wall to see if it'll stick, makes everybody freak out. The West is talking about how we're going to occupy Greenland, and we're going to have to send, troops to Greenland to take it from Denmark. And you see that that's just not going to happen. It's not the way that how President Trump negotiates publicly is not how President Trump and Secretary Rubio negotiate behind closed doors. And so I think where we landed is ultimately where the president wanted to land after all, is that we have security interests in that region. We want a stake, the primary stake, and making sure that our citizens are safe and that the citizens of our allied nations are safe from potential future threats. And I think that that is leadership to a T.
Okay, well said. So I have a couple of things here to get through. I also wanted your comments on President Trump unveiling his new international body, the Board of Peace, at the World Economic Forum. So Trump said it could go beyond peace in Gaza and even potentially replace the UN, which, communist China is in, and a lot of its ideologies run counter to many U.S. interests, but still has a lot of sway in the UN. The regime persecutes its people, and despite that, they're still on the UN Human Rights Council. So what are your overall thoughts on the situation, the Board of Peace, and what could it mean for the UN?
I'm going to say that I have one foot in each camp on this plan, right? I think that the UN is an absolutely feckless organization. I think that they have shown time and time again that they cannot stand by the principles and the priorities that they have said were in their founding document. I have an article coming out about this week about the major failures in Iran by the United Nations, and how, this tragedy has been going on for 47 years, and the United Nations has stood by and removed Iran off of the Iranian regime off of a seat of a council. It's crazy that the United Nations still pretends that they have any kind of control, power, or influence on any of these authoritarian regimes. Meanwhile, they allow China and Russia both to have permanent seats on the Security Council, where they support each other's vetoes at all times. So my opinion is that the United Nations needs to get it in gear and really start taking themselves seriously about the influence and power and control that they have, or I do believe you're going to see a United States removal, which is a huge component of the money that is received by the United Nations. I think you're going to see the United States back out of the things that no longer serve us, much like we did with the World Health Organization earlier this week. Whether or not I believe this new initiative of President Trump's is going to gain legs, I don't have enough information yet to be able to tell you how effective I think that's going to be. I believe if the partners that we have in the Middle East, like the United Arab Emirates, somewhat Saudi Arabia and Qatar, step up and really play a key role in a lot of the negotiations that are happening between Israel and Gaza and Hamas with the 20-point peace plan that is existing. I think that you could see some effectiveness take place. But look at the facts. Since the United States got involved in this peace resolution and this conflict resolution, you've had over 55,000 trucks go in of food, millions of pallets that Hamas was previously preventing from going in across the border. And so the results speak for themselves. I think when the United States gets involved with something and has good leadership at the helm, we do it effectively and we do it right. But I'm going to hold my breath on whether or not this maintains, because I really think it's about what the leaders in the Middle East do and how much support they put behind this initiative.
Okay, so Taylor, just one last thing. Can we get your thoughts on the apparent statements that are being made in refusing to sign on to the Board of Peace at the Davos ceremony by countries which are U.S. allies, by the way, the UK and France, and also some countries like Germany, Italy being absent from the signing?
I would say how many of those countries stood up and said, have a ceasefire in Gaza and scream from the rooftops about the atrocities that were going on there, which are true and are valid for those nations to do. But do they want to be a part of calling out the problem, or do they want to be a part of the solution? And if all of these other nations are coming on board stating, look, the United Nations hasn't worked, direct negotiations between Hamas and Israel hasn't worked. Iran is falling all over the place and falling all over themselves and imploding from the inside and killing thousands of people who are protesting in the streets about the IRGC and the Ayatollah. If the United Nations can't be effective, then somebody else has to do it, because it is really important that those regions of the world, get along and that we have peace in the Middle East, because look at how many acts of terror come out of those regions because nobody has their foot on the brake over there saying, hey, this is not the way we want our region to operate. And I think that our allies in that region, like the United Arab Emirates, are really setting a new precedent for what that leadership looks like. So all of those other nations who don't want to come on board, who don't want to get involved, they can stay in alignment with the United Nations that just passes a bunch of charters and does absolutely nothing that is going to stay effective. And we'll see which of the two sides of the coin are effective in this endeavor.
Okay, we will see. Always enjoy hearing your comments. Taylor, thank you so much.
Thank you.